Look, another primitive from the backwaters. Xyla sneered as Jake stepped off the shuttle. The room fell silent, all eyes on the lone human. Do you even know how to play Galactic Dominion? Jake's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to maintain a steady gaze. He had anticipated some hostility upon arriving at the Galactic Academy on Seraphis, but the intensity still caught him off guard. The Academy, renowned for its diverse student body and advanced technology, was a far cry from anything he had ever experienced on Earth. Jake squared his shoulders and walked through the bustling corridor, his mind racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Everywhere he looked, he saw beings from all corners of the galaxy, each with unique appearances and customs. The air buzzed with languages he couldn't understand, and the architecture around him was a blend of various alien influences. As he entered the main hall, he couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Whispers followed him, and he caught snippets of conversations. Can you believe they let a human in here? Must be some sort of charity case. Probably won't last a week. Ignoring the comments, Jake focused on the reason he was here. His acceptance into the academy was based on his academic prowess and strategic thinking. He was determined to prove that humans could excel alongside the best minds in the galaxy. He made his way to his assigned quarters, a small but well-equipped room. As he unpacked, a notification beeped on his tablet. It was an invitation to an orientation session in the common area. Taking a deep breath, Jake headed out, ready to face whatever came next. The common area was filled with students, each engrossed in their own activities. Holographic displays hovered in the air, showing news from different worlds, and various games were set up on tables. Jake spotted a group gathered around one table in particular, their attention focused on a complex game board. Curiosity piqued, he approached the group. The game looked intricate, with planets, ships, and resource tokens meticulously arranged. A tall, slender alien, with blue-tinted skin, noticed him and raised an eyebrow. "Never seen a human play Galactic Dominion," the alien said, his tone dripping with skepticism. Jake smiled politely. "I've read about it. Seems interesting." Xyla, who'd been observing from a distance, stepped forward. "Interesting. This game requires real strategy and intelligence. I doubt a human can grasp its complexity." Nari, an Arcanian student with shimmering silver scales, nudged Xyla. "Give him a chance. Everyone deserves a fair shot." Xyla scoffed, but didn't argue. Jake felt a surge of gratitude towards Nari. "Thanks," he said, addressing both of them. "I'd like to learn." "Suit yourself," Xyla muttered. "But don't expect any favors." Jake took a seat, and Nari began explaining the rules. Galactic Dominion was a strategic game where players managed resources, built fleets, and expanded their territories. The goal was to dominate the galaxy, either through conquest or diplomacy. As Nari spoke, Jake listened intently, absorbing every detail. After a while, Nari handed Jake a set of game pieces. "Want to give it a try?" Jake nodded, arranging his pieces on the board. The other players watched, some with interest, others with disdain. Xyla leaned back, his eyes fixed on Jake, as if waiting for him to make a mistake. The game began, and Jake quickly found himself immersed in the intricacies of Galactic Dominion. He made cautious moves at first, observing how the others played. Nari offered occasional tips, while Xyla remained silent, his expression unreadable. As the game progressed, Jake started to gain confidence. He made bolder moves, taking calculated risks that paid off. The room buzzed with murmurs as he successfully executed a series of strategies that caught even Nari by surprise. "Not bad," Nari admitted, her tone genuinely impressed. Xyla's eyes narrowed. "Beginner's luck." Jake shrugged, smiling. "Or maybe humans are just good at adapting." The tension in the room was palpable as the game continued. Jake's unconventional tactics threw the seasoned players off balance. He noticed Exlar's growing frustration, but remained focused, determined to prove his worth. In the final round, Jake executed a maneuver that secured his position, earning a respectable standing in his first game. The room fell silent, and for a moment, he wondered if he had overstepped. Then, to his surprise, a few students started clapping. Nari grinned, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Well played, Jake." Xyla, however, was far from pleased. He stood abruptly, his eyes flashing with anger. "This isn't over, human. You've got a lot to learn." Jake met his gaze steadily. "I'm here to learn, and I'm not backing down." As Zilla stormed off, Nari turned to Jake, her expression thoughtful. "You've made quite an impression. But be careful. Xyla doesn't take kindly to being challenged." Jake nodded, understanding the warning. "Thanks, Nari. I appreciate your help." She smiled. "You've got potential, Jake. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." With that, the room slowly returned to its usual activity. Jake felt a mix of relief and anticipation. He knew he had a long way to go, but today was a step in the right direction. Determined to carve out a place for himself at the academy, he resolved to master galactic dominion and earn the respect he deserved. Jake's dorm room was a stark contrast to the opulent and alien architecture of the Galactic Academy. The metallic walls hummed with the low frequency of energy flowing through the building, a reminder of the advanced technology surrounding him. Despite the initial hostility, Jake was determined to find his place. Jake spent hours hunched over his datapad, trying to understand the complexities of galactic dominion. The game was unlike anything he had encountered on Earth. Each turn required strategic thinking, resource management, and a deep understanding of galactic politics. His initial attempts were met with frustration as he struggled to grasp the intricacies. One afternoon, while studying the game in the Academy's expansive library, Jake noticed Nari, an Arcanian student, observing him from a distance. Her luminescent eyes reflected a mix of curiosity and sympathy. She approached him cautiously. "Mind if I join you?" Nari asked, her voice melodic and calming. Jake looked up, surprised by the friendly gesture. "Sure, I could use some help," he admitted, pushing a chair towards her. Over the next few days, Nari patiently explained the game's finer points. She taught Jake how to balance his resources, anticipate opponents' moves, and exploit weaknesses in their strategies. Her insights were invaluable, and Jake found himself improving rapidly. "Why are you helping me?" Jake asked one evening as they pored over game strategies. Nari smiled. "I believe in giving everyone a fair chance. Plus, I enjoy teaching." "Your determination is impressive, Jake." Her words bolstered his confidence. He was no longer just the human underdog. He was a contender, ready to prove his worth. The day of Jake's first game arrived. The arena was packed with students, eager to see how the human would fare. Whispers and snickers filled the air, but Jake tuned them out, focusing on the game board before him. Jake's heart pounded as the game began. His opponents were experienced players, their moves swift and calculated. But with each turn, Jake's confidence grew. He recalled Nari's lessons, applying them with precision. His innovative strategies caught his opponents off guard, forcing them to adapt to his unpredictable style. As the game progressed, Jake's performance silenced the skeptics. Even Exila, watching from the sidelines, couldn't hide his intrigue. Jake's moves were bold, yet calculated, each one building towards a larger strategy that was slowly becoming clear. Xyla, sensing a threat to his dominance, couldn't resist the urge to challenge Jake directly. He approached Jake after the game, his demeanor both arrogant and condescending. "You played well for a human," Xyla said, his eyes narrowing. "But let's see how you handle a real challenge." The crowd gasped as Xyla publicly challenged Jake to a high-stakes match. The tension was palpable. This was more than just a game. It was a clash of reputations. Jake met Xyla's gaze, unflinching. "I accept," he replied, his voice steady. The announcement of their match spread quickly, creating a buzz throughout the academy. Undeterred by the challenge, Jake returned to his dorm room, more determined than ever. He spent the next few days immersed in game strategies, refining his approach. Nari continued to support him, offering valuable insights and encouragement. "You've got this, Jake," Nari said, her eyes gleaming with confidence. "Just remember what you've learned and stay focused." Jake nodded, feeling a surge of determination. He was not just playing for himself, he was playing to prove that humans could compete on equal footing with the best the galaxy had to offer. The anticipation for Jake and Exila's match reached a fever pitch. The day before the game, Jake stood on the Academy's observation deck, gazing at the distant stars. He felt a mix of excitement and nerves, knowing that the next day would be pivotal. As he turned to leave, he bumped into Exila, who had been watching him with a smirk. "Enjoying the view while you can, human?" Scylla taunted. "Tomorrow, you'll learn your place." Jake stared back, his resolve unwavering. "We'll see about that," he replied, walking away with his head held high. The anticipation in the Galactic Academy was palpable. Students from various species filled the hall, their faces illuminated by the holographic game board in the center. This was no ordinary match. It was a showdown between Xyla, the reigning champion, and Jake, the human newcomer who had dared to challenge him. Jake stood at his console, his heart racing, but his mind sharp. He glanced at Nari, who gave him a reassuring nod. "You've got this, Jake. Just remember the strategies we discussed." "Thanks, Neri. I'm ready," Jake replied, taking a deep breath. The game master, a tall, stern-faced Zorbon, stepped forward. "Welcome to the high-stakes match of Galactic Dominion," his voice echoed. "Players, prepare to engage." The holographic board lit up, displaying a detailed map of the galaxy. Planets, star systems, and fleet movements were all rendered in vivid detail. Jake and Exilar exchanged a brief, intense look before turning their attention to the game. "Commence," the game master declared. Jake initiated his strategy, focusing on rapid expansion and securing key resource points. He knew that to win against Exilar, he had to be both aggressive and unpredictable. His fingers danced across the console, issuing commands to his fleets and colonies. Xyla smirked, confident in his superiority. "You're out of your depth, human," he taunted, launching a series of calculated attacks on Jake's outer colonies. Jake's screen flashed with alerts as Xyla's forces moved in. "All right, let's see how you handle this," Jake muttered, countering with a swift redeployment of his defense fleets. As the game progressed, the tension in the room grew. Students watched in awe as Jake and Exilar maneuvered their fleets, each move more daring than the last. Jake's innovative tactics began to unsettle Exilar, who found himself repeatedly on the defensive. "He's good," murmured a nearby student, an Eltarian with shimmering blue scales. "I've never seen anyone push Isla this hard." Jake capitalized on Exilar's hesitation, launching a surprise assault on one of Xyla's key resource hubs. The holographic display showed explosions and ship movements in real time, creating a visually stunning spectacle. Xyla's eyes narrowed. "Impressive, but not good enough," he growled, sending reinforcements to counter Jake's attack. Jake's mind raced. He needed to think several steps ahead. "Nari, I'm going to need those reinforcements we discussed," he whispered into his communicator. "Already on their way," Nari replied, her voice steady. "You're doing great, Jake. Keep up the pressure." Jake initiated a multi-pronged assault, spreading Xyla's forces thin. His fleets moved with precision, striking at vulnerable points in Xyla's defenses. The game board lit up with markers indicating battle zones, each clash depicted in intricate detail. "How is he doing this?" Xyla muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. He had underestimated the human, and now he was paying the price. The game reached a critical juncture. Xyla launched a massive counter-offensive, hoping to overwhelm Jake's scattered forces. The holographic display showed waves of ships converging on Jake's positions. Jake remained calm. "Stay focused," he reminded himself, coordinating his defenses with methodical precision. He redirected his fleets, creating defensive formations that absorbed Exilers' attacks and struck back with devastating efficiency. Students gasped as the tide of battle shifted. Jake's tactical genius was on full display, and even those who had doubted him began to appreciate his skill. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, a mix of awe and excitement. "He's not just holding his own," an astonished student remarked. "He's actually winning." Xyla's frustration boiled over. He launched a desperate, all-out attack, throwing everything he had at Jake. The game board erupted in a flurry of activity, ships clashing in a symphony of chaos. Jake saw his opportunity. "This is it," he thought, issuing a final set of commands. His fleets executed a perfectly timed maneuver, encircling Xyla's forces and cutting off their retreat. The holographic display showed Xyla's ships being systematically dismantled, one by one. "No!" Xyla shouted, slamming his fist on the console. His forces were decimated, his strategies outmatched by Jake's relentless ingenuity. The Game Master stepped forward, raising his hand. "Victory goes to Jake Cooper," he announced, his voice echoing through the hall. The room erupted in applause. Jake stood back, breathing heavily but smiling. He had done it. He had proven himself not just as a player, but as a strategist worthy of respect. Nari rushed over, beaming with pride. "You did it, Jake. That was incredible." "Thanks, Nari," Jake replied, feeling a surge of accomplishment. "I couldn't have done it without your help." Xyla approached, his expression a mix of anger and grudging respect. "You surprised me, human," he said, extending his hand. "Well played." Jake shook his hand firmly. "Thanks, Xyla." It was a tough match. The pause in the game had left everyone on edge. As the screens flickered back to life, the tension in the room was palpable. Jake Cooper took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the game board with renewed focus. He could feel the weight of the Academy's gaze, but he pushed the pressure aside. This was his moment. The game resumed, but almost immediately, Jake faced an unexpected setback. A crucial supply line in his territory was cut off, leaving several of his fleets stranded without resources. He frowned, quickly calculating his options. "Xyla must have anticipated this move," Jake muttered under his breath. "Stay calm, Jake," Neri whispered, her eyes darting between the game board and Jake's determined face. "You can still turn this around." Jake nodded, drawing on the strategies they had discussed. Nari had pointed out potential vulnerabilities in Xyla's setup that could be exploited. He quickly rerouted his remaining resources, reinforcing his most critical positions. "We need to isolate Xyla's main fleet," Nari suggested, pointing to a cluster of ships near the edge of the board. "If we can cut them off, his power base will crumble." Jake saw the logic in her plan. "You're right. Let's do this." Xyla, sensing his advantage, launched an aggressive offensive. His ships moved in a coordinated attack, targeting Jake's weaker positions. The Zorbon's smirk was evident as he watched Jake scramble to defend. "You're outmatched, human," Xyla taunted. "You should have known better than to challenge me." Jake ignored the jibe, his mind working furiously. He couldn't afford to lose focus now. He executed a feint, drawing Xyla's forces into a trap. Several of Xyla's ships fell into the ambush, but the damage to Jake's fleet was significant. Despite the setbacks, Jake remained resolute. He knew he had to stay one step ahead. Drawing on his knowledge of ancient human tactics, he devised a strategy that combined deception with precision strikes. "Nari, we need to deploy the decoy ships," Jake said. "It's risky, but it's our best shot." Nari nodded. "I trust your judgment." As Jake moved the decoy ships into position, he could see the confusion on Xyla's face. The Zorban hesitated, Unsure whether to commit his forces to the apparent weakness, Jake seized the moment. He ordered a simultaneous assault on multiple fronts, using the decoys to mask his true intentions. Xyla's forces were spread thin, unable to respond effectively to the multi-pronged attack. "He's trying to bait us," Xyla growled, frustration evident in his voice. But where is the real threat? The real threat was already in motion. Jake's main fleet, hidden behind a series of asteroid belts, emerged and struck at Xyla's core systems. The attack was swift and devastating, crippling Xyla's command structure. The audience was on the edge of their seats, watching the screen intently. Every move Jake made was met with gasps and murmurs. The tension was electric, and even XLR's supporters couldn't help but admire Jake's ingenuity. "He's really doing it," a student whispered. "He's turning the tide." Jake's hands moved swiftly, commanding his fleet with precision. Each decision was calculated, each move deliberate. The room buzzed with anticipation as Jake's forces closed in on the final objective. Just as victory seemed within reach, a new alert flashed on the screen. Xyla had activated a hidden reserve fleet, a last-ditch effort to reclaim his lost territory. The massive fleet materialized out of hyperspace, bearing down on Jake's vulnerable flank. Jake's eyes widened. "I didn't see that coming," he admitted, his voice steady despite the looming threat. Nari placed a hand on his shoulder. "You can do this, Jake. You've come this far. Trust your instincts." Jake took a deep breath, his mind racing. He quickly assessed the situation, recognizing that the next few minutes would be crucial. The hidden fleet was a formidable force, but Jake had one last trick up his sleeve. "We're going to split our forces," Jake announced. "It's risky, but if we can divide their attention, we might just pull this off." Nari nodded, her faith in Jake unwavering. "Let's finish this." With swift commands, Jake deployed his ships in a daring maneuver. His forces fanned out, creating multiple targets and forcing Xyla's fleet to spread thin. The battle was fierce, each side pushing their ships to the limit. The tension in the room was palpable. The final moments of the match between Jake and XLR had everyone on the edge of their seats. The large holographic game board glowed brightly, projecting intricate details of the ongoing battle. Jake's hand hovered over the control panel, his mind racing with calculations. "End it, human," Xyla taunted, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Jake's eyes flicked up to meet Xyla's, then returned to the board. "All right," Jake said softly, making his move. The room fell silent as the game's AI processed the command. Jake's fleet maneuvered deftly, outflanking Xyla's forces. A series of strategic strikes followed, systematically dismantling Xyla's defenses. The final blow came swiftly, a masterful combination of tactics that left Xyla's central command exposed and defeated. The hologram blinked, signaling the end of the match. "Victory, Jake Cooper," the AI announced. A wave of disbelief swept through the room, followed by thunderous applause. Nari was the first to reach Jake. "You did it," she exclaimed, eyes shining with admiration. "That was incredible." Jake smiled, the weight of the past weeks lifting off his shoulders. "We did it," he replied, acknowledging her support. Xyla approached, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Jake braced for another insult. Instead, Xyla extended his hand. "You've earned my respect, human," he said begrudgingly. "That was a game well played." Jake shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Xyla." It was a tough match. As the room buzzed with excitement, the Academy's headmaster stepped forward. "Attention, everyone." His voice commanded the room. "Today, we have witnessed not just a game, but a lesson in unity and perseverance. Jake Cooper, your strategic brilliance and determination have set a new standard. We are proud to have you here." Jake felt a swell of pride as he stepped up to the headmaster. "Thank you, sir. I'm honored." Later that evening, A ceremony was held to honor Jake's achievement. The Grand Hall was decorated with banners from all represented species, a testament to the Academy's diversity. Students and faculty gathered, creating a vibrant sea of faces. The headmaster addressed the crowd. In recognition of his exceptional skills and the unity he has fostered among us, we present Jake Cooper with the Medal of Strategic Excellence. He pinned a gleaming medal onto Jake's chest, and the hall erupted in applause. Jake looked out at the crowd, feeling a deep sense of belonging. This moment was about more than just a game. It was a step towards greater understanding and respect among different species. After the ceremony, Jake and Neri walked through the Academy gardens. The night air was cool and refreshing, filled with the fragrance of alien flora. "I still can't believe it," Neri said, shaking her head. "You've changed everything." Jake laughed. "I didn't do it alone. Your support made all the difference." Nari smiled. "We make a good team. What's next for you, Jake?" He looked up at the stars, contemplating the future. "I think it's time to explore new challenges. There's so much more we can achieve together." In the following weeks, the Academy buzzed with the news of Jake's victory. His success inspired other students to challenge their own biases and work together more closely. The once isolated human was now a symbol of unity and cooperation. Jake continued to excel in his studies, often collaborating with Nari and other students on various projects. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable were now breaking down, replaced by mutual respect and camaraderie. One day, while working on a project in the library, Zilla approached Jake and Nari. "I need your help," he admitted, his tone humble. "There's a new game strategy I'm working on, and I could use your insights." Jake nodded, pleased by the request. "Of course, Exila. Let's see what we can come up with." As they worked together, the competitive tension that once defined their relationship turned into a productive collaboration. The game had become a bridge, connecting minds from different worlds. Weeks turned into months, and the Academy thrived. The students, inspired by Jake's example, pushed the boundaries of what was possible. They developed innovative solutions to complex problems, blending their unique perspectives and talents. At the end of the academic year, a grand assembly was held. The headmaster stood before the gathered students and faculty, his pride evident. "This year, we have seen extraordinary achievements. We have learned that our differences are strengths, not weaknesses. Together, we are unstoppable." Jake, standing among his peers, felt a sense of fulfillment. He had come to the Academy seeking respect, and he had found it. But more importantly, he had found friends and allies who shared his vision for a better, more united galaxy. As the assembly ended, Jake looked around at the faces of his friends Nari, Isila, and so many others. They had all grown, not just as individuals, but as a community. The journey had been challenging, but it was just the beginning.